Cheers y'all, it's Ryan from I Run On Beer here to give you a review of a product I was actually not initially planning on doing a formal review of, but I have just enjoyed testing the product so much I couldn't not tell you about it. Cheers y'all, how's it going? I hope all is well. As I mentioned in the intro, I have recently been testing a product that, as far as I'm concerned, was made for the purpose of me reviewing. It is a match made in heaven, and that is sunscreen. Specifically, this new sunscreen from KINeSYS. And I say it was basically made for me because if you haven't been able to tell from all of my videos, I am an incredibly pasty, pale individual. I burn very easily. I have a very detailed sunscreen regimen when I'm running or just generally spending time outdoors, and have truly enjoyed testing this new sunscreen product and will absolutely be adding this to my sunscreen regimen moving forward. But just to clarify a few things, get the disclaimers out of the way, I mentioned this was sent to me for the purpose of testing, promoting across social media as part of my participation in the Brave Pro Ambassador program, but wasn't initially planning to do like a long form formal review of the product. But as I mentioned, I have just truly enjoyed the product so much, I thought it deserved this long form review. So you're probably thinking to yourself, what makes the sunscreen so great? And I will dive into that, but quickly just want to run through the specific product lines that they sent me to test. So the first one I would say is probably like their main line of sunscreen. This is their aroma-free, just oil-free, clear spray-on sunscreen. I should clarify all of these, by the way, the company KINeSYS, their sunscreen is made for active people, so sweat resistance is a big perk. But the first one, just that odor-free, traditional 30 SPF sunscreen. All of these are 30 SPF, just different types. The next one is another spray, so similar composition, oil-free spray that you apply to the skin. This one does have a nice perfume to it. This one is vanilla green tea, and this is just a small sample bottle, 1 fluid ounce of that. And then the last one is a little bit different. This is a mineral-based sunscreen. So I'm not gonna get into the science because I truly don't understand it. You may have heard in the news, I know I have certainly been aware that sunscreen, it turns out, isn't super great for a lot of marine life. It's killing off a lot of the reefs, all the chemicals in it. And so these mineral-based sunscreens are sort of the answer to that. It eliminates all of those chemicals while still maintaining the same level of protection. So this one is one of those mineral-based, reef-safe sunscreens that you can use. And as I mentioned, this one is more of a paste as opposed to the sprays that I showed you before. This one also has a nice aroma to it. It is peppermint rosemary, which is super refreshing. But I'll come back to sort of my specific uses for each of the different types of sunscreen. Before we dive into that, why the product line as a whole I have just enjoyed so much. And I think just to help illustrate that, the easiest way for me to do that is to talk about my two biggest complaints when it comes to sunscreen. Like I said, I am very pale. I go through a ton of sunscreen every year. It is a huge pain, and my two biggest gripes with sunscreen is, one, the time it takes to put on sunscreen and reapply it as often as you are recommended to put on sunscreen, which is like every 90-ish minutes, 80 to 90 minutes, no longer than 2 hours in between applications. And when you are out on the beach with a lot of exposed skin, especially with as pale a skin as mine, it just takes so much time to cover everything. I often joke that by the time, like if I start with my arms, head, upper body, move down to the legs, by the time I'm finishing up, I often forget, did I do my lower back? Did I get my shoulder? Did I get my neck, etc.? As silly as that sounds, it is such a pet peeve of mine and such a pain point in my summer living. So that's one, the time it takes to put on sunscreen, huge gripe for me. The other is just how oily sunscreen is, especially as you're building up applications throughout the day, especially if you start to sweat, you almost feel like you have like a coat of oil on all surfaces of your skin. And that's part of the reason I have a hard time telling what parts I've put sunscreen on and what parts I haven't, because my whole body, especially my hands, just feels so oily and slimy and disgusting once that sunscreen is on and once I've started sweating. In comes the KINeSYS sunscreen. So the biggest thing for them is they are oil free and they are focused on removing that slimy feeling. So that's the number one priority for the sunscreen, is again, to just remove that layer of oil and to not be nearly as uncomfortable or at all uncomfortable as you start to sweat on the run when you're out in the sun in that more active lifestyle. So that I can 100% get behind. I've used this primarily for running. All of my afternoon runs, all of my weekend long runs, I've been putting this on the last several weeks. Of course, you're gonna have a little bit of a, I wouldn't even say oily feeling, but you do get a little bit of like a sheen texture just from putting on any sunscreen, but it is not that thick sunscreen paste that I personally am used to. So huge perk of the KINeSYS sunscreen that when using this, I just don't feel that layer of slime. And so that is a huge perk for me. The second piece, the time piece. So again, I mentioned I have that crazy sunscreen regimen. I shy away from spray on like aerosol sunscreen. I find I often miss a spot if I'm using the spray on aerosol sunscreen. That's part one, but I'm not as concerned with that. The part that I don't like is I noticed with the amount of sunscreen I'm using, whatever they put into the sunscreen to make it aerosol, to make it spray out of the can, eats away at any kind of like plastic or anything like that I'm using. So I noticed it was eating away at like my Nalgene water bottles. Similarly, it was eating through watch bands like crazy. These silicone watch bands, my first Garmin, I cannot tell you how many bands I went through before I realized it was the spray on aerosol sunscreen that was eating away at the band. So don't really love to think about what chemical is doing that to the plastic. Don't really want to have that on my skin. So I usually use the rub-on, which just takes forever. So again, huge perk that I have really appreciated about the KINeSYS sunscreen. It goes on super easy. I also think because it's like a thinner texture, it spreads out and spreads onto your skin so much more easily than sunscreen that I'm used to. It's just 3, maybe 4 sprays per arm to cover the full surface of the skin. Super simple, very easy. I can get through it quickly and I don't forget which places I've sprayed by the time I'm finished. I can go through the whole thing in just a couple minutes. Easy for the first application and easy to reapply. So that's for the sprays. And I guess that covers sort of the main use that I've been using for the different types of sunscreen. So the odor-free, just the non-scented sunscreen, this is what I've been using. This has been the workhorse for any kind of summer activity, but primarily for running. This other one, the vanilla green tea, I've been using more when we are just like hanging out socially outside, when I don't mind having that sort of perfumey aroma lingering around. So I have really enjoyed this. I think it smells delightful, but again, don't want that extra aroma when I'm out running, but when I'm hanging out with friends, I'm absolutely reaching for this. It is a nice substitute for that traditional sunscreen smell that I'm used to. I know all of my friends and family are used to just by hanging out with me, so happy to substitute something new in. And then the last one, the paste, as I mentioned, a bit harder to spread on because it is a thicker sunscreen, so I'm primarily using this face, ears, neck, those kind of smaller areas where I don't have to worry about covering a large surface area of skin, but also ones that are more prone to sunburn. So I'm thinking like especially the tip of my nose, the tops of the ears, the back of the neck, etc., where I might want a little bit thicker of a coat of sunscreen for some extra protection against those harmful sun rays. So that is the quick overview of the KINeSYS sunscreen. As I mentioned, I just cannot say enough good things about this stuff. It's also relatively affordable. Another huge perk for me, my sunscreen budget through the summer seems to grow and grow each year. So this bottle here is just $26 for 4 ounces. For a limited time, you can also use the code BibBrave23 to save 15% on any order. And I don't know if you can see, you can sort of see, yeah, where the level is down to. So I've been using this for like 4 or 5 weeks at this point. Again, primarily out on those runs. So it's just covering my arms and my legs, like lower legs, neck, and face with this sunscreen, and have barely even started to get into the larger part of the bottle. So just want to say a little bit goes a long way. I am definitely restocking on this to get me through the rest of the summer, and probably checking out some of their other scented sunscreens as well. I think I saw mango on there. So very excited to just work through the line and to have a sunscreen that I'm excited about, which feels weird to say, but again, having grown up with this shade of skin, sunscreen is such a massive part of my life and has always just been a chore. And so to have something that just takes a lot of the pain out of the sunscreen process, smells nice in the process as well. Just have truly enjoyed it. So huge shout out to KINeSYS. Again, if you want to try it out for yourself, you can use the code BibRave23 to save on that order. Also available through Amazon Prime. So I hope you snag some and keep yourself protected this summer. But thank you as always for tuning in. I hope you'll give the video a thumbs up to help some other pasty boys find the video in the future. I hope your summer training is going as well as mine is so far. And until next time, I'll see you around. Cheers.